When it comes to Destiny's newest DLC, Beyond Light, there's a number of ways to enjoy it, from chilling and doing the missions, the quests at your own pace, all the way to those headline 24/7 raid-ready grind guides. Both of these are perfectly fine, and for someone like me, I typically focus on PvP here, but I wanted to share with you the exact strategies for being as effective as possible when it comes to leveling up right now, because it's been a really busy topic in our community Discord since the launch. You're welcome to join in on that, whether it be to play a part in the discussions or just finding people to play with. We'd love to have you, and there's a link below. So back to the topic. What is the most effective way to reach 1260? Well, it does depend. Are you a casual player? Are you an enthusiast? Maybe you're hardcore. And then believe it or not, there's also another level which I would probably call ultra hardcore. I'm going to cover exactly what you need to do for each of those scenarios so that you can see where you fall and just follow that, because it impacts which character you're going to choose when you load up the game first. Now, before I break into the order of events on all of this, you need to understand how leveling works. The concepts are generally the same, but it's a little bit different now than it was before. So let's say it's been a while and you jump in at 1050. The ultimate goal is obviously to reach 1260, otherwise known as the hard cap or a pinnacle cap. The game behaves differently though throughout that gap depending on your character's level. So let's describe that. Part 1, leveling sections. From 1050 to 1200, all drops in the game act kind of like powerfuls and pinnacles. If you don't know what powerfuls and pinnacles are, those are just drops that occur that are guaranteed to be higher than your character's light level. So in this case, for a pretty large gap of power level, every single drop you get will be notably higher than your character's level. If you play a lot of Destiny, you're used to things being labeled as a powerful or a pinnacle, and you know what I'm talking about. Well, in this case, nothing is labeled as that in the beginning. Everything is like powerful and pinnacle. Once you cross 1200, those labels get introduced into the game. So don't worry. Anything you do until 1200 will not waste your pinnacle or powerful level activities in the future. Now, I'm going to come back to what the fastest possible way to do this is, but like I said, I'm going to keep going and just explaining how the sections work. Next up is 1200 to 1250. Once your character is in this window, and I'm talking base power level, by the way, not your artifact. If you remember, if you hover over your power level, it'll show you your base plus your artifact to give you your total. Everything I talk about in this entire video is all talking about your base, because that's what the game looks at when it decides how these things should be dropping. In this window, it's the same deal. All activities you play can drop gear or weapons. The difference is now they won't be acting like powerfuls or pinnacles. They will drop around your base character's current level. I say that because they can still drop lower, and the maximum that they can drop at is that base level. I can be at level 1204 with some guns that are higher, say 1207, but my gear is lower, 1202, and my average being 1204, meaning general activity drops can drop as high as 1204. So because of the fact that they won't drop higher anymore, that's where these labeled power and pinnacle activities come into play. But before I talk about that, it's important to know that Bungie implemented a brand new thing in this season where they said, do whatever you want. You could play PvP for hours on end, and eventually you will get up there. And the reason is because while almost all the drops that you're getting are going to be this character base level drop that I just described, meaning you won't be going up, every once in a while, a random powerful drop will occur. It won't be restricted to that character base level, and it'll just be straight up higher. And that's actually really sweet, because now you can just do whatever you want. But you should note that that could take a long time. No one has really confirmed the frequency of these random drops that are in the pool of random regular drops, so I don't really recommend it. It's kind of just a nice bonus. And now because of all of this, that's where the labeled power and pinnacle drops come into play. As soon as your character's base level crosses that 1200 threshold that I'm talking about, Bungie actually adds the labels to certain activities. Now, historical powerfuls have been broken into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, each tier giving you a little bit better of a boost. Right now, I don't think anyone has seen a tier 3 yet. They might be out there as we get further into quests, but at the very least, we know that there's tier 1 and tier 2. So now I'm going to show you the entire list of tier 1 powerfuls that can drop, and these should be dropping at +3 of your base level. So again, in that old scenario, if I have high guns and low gear, but my average is 1204, if I go do a powerful activity, it will drop at 1207. If I'm unlucky, it'll be a 1207 gun, and it won't really help me at all. But if I'm lucky, it'll be a 1207 piece of gear, and that'll bump my average up a little bit. Instead of going through each one of these in depth, I'm actually going to come back to that when I go through the order of events section. Tier 2 powerfuls, so far, all we know of is the Clan Steward, which is just earning 5 5,000 XP. So that'll actually happen naturally fairly quick. But don't worry, you're not wasting the tier 2 powerful yet because it doesn't actually occur until you go and pick it up at Hawthorne. If you know of something else, put it in the comments right away so that others can be aware. Tier 3 powerfuls, my gut tells me that they will exist later on as we unlock things. Like, for example, later in the campaign, you're going to unlock these things called Varix's sabotage assignments, and those can already lead to powerfuls, but I wouldn't really worry about this too much right now because this guide is just to get you on the right track. So finally, there's pinnacles. Doing all of these powerfuls is how you get your character from that 1200 all the way up to 1250. Now let me clarify, you can be under 1250 and a pinnacle will still benefit you. It will drop at a +5 to your base level and help you level up quickly. But the reason why people like to limit this to the 1250 to 1260 is because it's the only way to get your character above 1250. And once you do an activity that's labeled with pinnacle or powerful, for example, that activity will not give you that same pinnacle or powerful again. You can't just keep farming it. You have to wait for the reset each week. So once people reach 1250, then they'll start to do their pinnacles. Here's the current list of what we assume. 3 quick play matches, 3 strikes. Make sure your elemental matching is in place. 3 gambit matches, 100k points on the nightfall. And then this weekend, if it's no different from before, win number 7 and going flawless will also drop you 1 pinnacle each. All right, now that you know how all of the drops act and their relationship to that journey, people will actually plan their steps, like I said, to maximize their efficiency and make sure that they give themselves the best possible chance to reach 1250 early enough in week 1 so that they can save their pinnacles for that window. That leads us to part 2, the order of your characters. Back to those 4 versions. You see, technically there is no time limit on doing this stuff. So ultimately, you can just take your time and do whatever you want, whenever you want, and eventually you'll get there. But most people use the raid day as sort of their ending time window. In this particular case, the raid day is on November 21st, which meant 2 weeks worth of activities. The ultra hardcore players, for week 1, they'll hop on their favorite characters, do everything up to the point where they're done their powerfuls only, swap over to the medium character, do the same thing, powerfuls only, swap over to their worst character, and at that point, they'll do all the powerfuls and all the pinnacles. Then they'll go back to their medium character, do the pinnacles on them, back to the favorite character to do the last set of pinnacles. Week 2, they will literally just rinse and repeat. Favorite, medium, worst, powerfuls only, then worst, medium, favorite for the pinnacles. When I go through the order of events, it'll make a lot more sense on why they do this. Slightly less hardcore are people who don't really care about prioritizing the differences between powerfuls and pinnacles in those first couple of weeks. They'll start with their favorite character in week 1. They'll do everything, including the powerfuls and the pinnacles. Then they'll move on to their medium, do everything, then move on to their worst, do everything. Then in week 2, they'll start with their worst, move on to the medium, and then move on to the favorite. Again, this will make more sense once I go through the order of steps. The enthusiasts, I would say, are people who don't really have the time to repeat all of the steps in week 1 as well as week 2 individually. So for them, they just kind of treat it as a 2-week window regardless of reset. In that case, it's best to just start on your worst character. You crush out everything you can, then you move on to your medium character, you crush out everything you can, then you move on to your favorite character, you crush out everything you can. Your goal is to just do that before November 21st. Now, if you're less of a hardcore player, same deal here. You'll want to combine weeks 1 and 2. Your goal is still November 21st, but you just do one character and follow the order of events that I'm about to show you. I'm going to blast through these lists as quick as I can, explaining why you're doing what you're doing. Feel free to ask me any question you want in the comments. Ultra hardcore, you're probably already halfway through this list as you watch the video. Choose your raid character. Exit the intro mission immediately. Go to the tower, get your artifact, so that any XP you gain can be working towards that. Masterwork your ghost immediately and put as many XP gains as you can. Now, when I was making this video in the morning, I was about to tell you to go do the Lost Sector at Widow's Walk on EDZ. Well, unfortunately, Bungie has already patched an extremely efficient, cheesy shortcut method to level up. I'm really sorry if you've missed that already, but I put a lot of thought into it and you can still try and cruise from 1060 all the way to 1200. You just need to do the Lake of Shadow strike with 2 of your buddies. Once you get going, you can do this thing in under 3 minutes, but here's an example of how you can run through the entire strike. When you get to the end, you're going to be guaranteed 1 drop. If you want, you could run around and do public events, you could play Crucible, but nothing I could think of out there is shorter than 3 minutes and rinse and repeat fashion. And this is another reason why I like to try and welcome as many people into the Discord as I possibly can. Things like this come up in there all the time, so a lot of people in our chat knew this yesterday, and I just got pulled away and couldn't get the video done until this morning. But back to the list. So once you've reached 1200, transfer your guns from that character to your medium character. Now your medium character is starting out at a higher base instantly because of the 1200 power level guns. Rinse and repeat. Do this exact same strategy. Get that character all the way to 1200. Transfer your guns to the third character. Now, once all your characters are at 1200, go back to your first one, which was your raid one. You can do the campaign and start unlocking quests and bounties. You don't really have to do that, but I do recommend you do it because it isn't that bad. It didn't take too long, and there's some quests that you can get experience towards along the way while you do the rest of this list. Do your powerfuls on this first character. Now, if you are insanely hardcore, or if the Lost Sector wasn't patched, I would have told you that in between your powerfuls, you just go and crank out some more drops. The reason is that when you get high drops from these powerfuls, your average base level goes up. That means you're going to have some gear that's higher than your average, some gear that's lower than your average. Running activities as fast as you can, like that Lost Sector or the Lake of Shadows strike in this case, can fill that gap and balance out your gear so that the next time you do a powerful, it'll be higher than what it would have been. This is extremely tedious now that the patch is fixed, so you probably want to skip this step. Once you're done this, transfer your guns that are above 1200 over to your second character. Rinse and repeat. Do all the powerfuls on your second character. Once you're done that, transfer those guns to your third character. Do the same thing. Once you're done the powerfuls on all three characters, you start doing the pinnacles in the reverse order. So in this case, you stay on that worst character and you crush out your pinnacles. Then you transfer your guns to your medium character, crush the pinnacles. Move your guns over to the third character, crush the pinnacles. That's week 1. You do the exact same steps in week 2 and you will be as high as you can possibly be. But remember that the first 24 hours of the raid is in contest mode and they're going to cap everyone's light at 1230. The reason they do that is because they want World's First to be entirely based on team play, not on who had more time in the day. The last 3 sections are going to go a lot quicker, but let's chat about every time I say do the powerfuls. A lot of them in my list were basic and I don't need to touch, like completing bounties. Just be careful when you're doing some of these though, because doing Crucible bounties might end up doing 3 rounds of quick play and getting you your pinnacle. And that's why I say that first order of events is really ultra hardcore, because a lot of people aren't going to care if they accidentally do a pinnacle before a powerful. It's not the end of the world. But the ones I wanted to touch on are Valor and Glory. So Valor, I believe, will drop you 5 powerfuls. That's just playing any quick play match that you want. The table up here shows all the different Valor rank ups, and every time you go to a completely new section, like say from Brave to Heroic, you should get a powerful to drop. And that's on top of the fact that I said there's those super random world drops that just come out of nowhere that aren't labeled. Then similarly on Glory, there's also rank ups whenever you go from one segment to the next. But the one catch that you should be aware of is that labeled powerfuls and pinnacles in the Crucible are separate across your characters, so doing those 7 round wins in comp on your Warlock is completely separate from doing 7 round wins on your Hunter. But when it comes to the Valor and Glory rank ups, that's account based. So if you were to go from 0 to 5500 in Glory, you would only earn those powerfuls once on whatever character that you do them. It doesn't really matter in the long run, so I would say just do it on your most comfortable character with PvP. The Nightfall Ordeal progression, if you're trying to reach 100% there without doing your pinnacle, then just do them on Adept and crush them out 3 times, and that way it'll ensure you don't go over the 100,000. Lastly, you've got exotics and trials, right? First of all, exotics are random drops, so that you just can't control. Be happy when it happens. But there's also these legendary lost sectors, I think they're called. Yesterday there was the Perdition and Bunker E15, but now today, all of a sudden Bunker E15 has disappeared from my map. There seems to be more than 2 though, so I'm guessing out of the pool of legendary lost sectors, they just reset and show 2 of them per day. I don't really know yet, but technically doing those solo would get you an exotic. Again, those power levels are super high though, and you really shouldn't be that concerned. I just wanted you to be aware. And then trials, this weekend is going to have some powerfuls. So, if you reach a point where you're ready to do pinnacles on a character before trials somehow, don't wait up. Just do them. It's not the end of the world. It's only 2 powerfuls, but they should occur at win 3 and win 5. Now for the hardcore, the only real difference here is just crushing out the pinnacles at the same time that you do your powerfuls before you switch characters. So I won't go through these one by one, but they're there for a screenshot. The enthusiast, if you recall, I said that's where you kind of blend the 2 weeks in a row. You don't really worry about reset. You just work your way through from now to November 1st, starting on your worst character, doing your powerfuls and your pinnacles together, then your second and third, and see where you're at for raid day. Last but not least is those who want to be a bit more casual is just maybe doing one character. Do the mission, do the campaign, or maybe you crush out the 1200 in the Lost Sector first so that the campaign is easier. Do your powerfuls. If you have time to try and balance out your gear, I would recommend you do that. Then do all of your pinnacles before reset. But if time is an issue, just do the pinnacles before you ever worry about doing any balancing. So I hope this can be a good reference for you or for anyone who wants to screenshot this and keep an eye on it while they go through the mission. But other than that, I've been enjoying Beyond Light, and I'm excited to get back into some PvP tips for you guys to really help you all out in Crucible. So without further ado, I'm going to get back at it, and I'll chat with you guys later.